Welcome back, everybody. Let's try to move past the markets for the moment and go into politics, in particular, the blame game.
Community activists are fighting back today. They're pushing back hard over the role of the Community Reinvestment Act in creating the subprime crisis.
They're making the case that the blame rests with Wall Street, not minorities and others that were hit hard by foreclosures. John Taylor is CEO of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Hi, John. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, so you say Wall Street is to blame here, not the people who signed on the dotted line, possibly knowing full well that they couldn't afford the mortgages?
Well, very few people knew full well they couldn't afford it. They were, if in worst case scenario, they thought they might not be able to in a few years, but they thought that they were convinced by lenders and brokers that they'd be able to refinance and they wouldn't have the same loan, that there was a way out of this. But no, there's no question. I mean, look, this notion of blaming CRA is ludicrous. And Liz and David, here's the reason why. 75% of all the loans that are now problematic, that are causing all this angst on Wall Street, were done by institutions and by subsidiaries of institutions that are not CRA regulated. So these loans, like independent mortgage companies, they're not covered by CRA. So the notion that that had anything to do with it is ludicrous. What really changed in this industry is this. 5 or 6 years ago, Wall Street in earnest said, look, make any of these loans. We got people who will invest in this. We got people who will buy these things. We'll have them rated by S&P and Moody's and others, and you know, just make them, and we'll rate them somehow. And everybody wants to buy into this market. And so brokers and people who had nothing on the hook after these loans were made and only concerned about a fee now became the majority of the market. It shifted from banks, which were more responsible and were more regulated, to these highly unregulated institutions that all they saw was the money. If you walked into their office, they'd actually try to convince you to take out a bigger loan, because the bigger loan they got, the bigger fee, and Wall Street bought it.
But so, John, you know, one of the main reasons why is also because of the fact that people didn't hold mortgages in the past 10 years. We've gone from a situation where banks used to hold mortgages for a while, but now they'd get them out there, they'd sell them, and they were done with it. If you don't hold a mortgage, you don't care if it's ever paid off. And in fact, John,
but you do have with the big institutions, you have reps and warrants, and
you
they
do,
know that
you do.
You know,
but, hold on a second, John. What I want to get to is what happened with Countrywide, because Countrywide made. Essentially, they were bought up by Bank of America, but they just Bank of America agreed to an $8 billion, I think more than that, settlement because they kind of admitted to the fact that they were doing predatory lending practices, or what is being called that now. So haven't you won? I mean, you've essentially won your argument with the state of California and other states.
No, we've all lost, right? I mean, everybody's suffering from this, not the least of which are these homeowners who got into these mortgages that they can't get out of. And that's, unfortunately, the bailout failed to address that. And it seems crazy that it didn't, because if we continue to have the levels of foreclosures we're going to continue to have, because the bailout doesn't address that, then we're going to continue to have a shaky market. But look, Bank of America didn't do the predatory lending. It's true that Countrywide they were the originators of these products, but it's not like we're sitting here gloating we won and we were right. We got to figure out a way out of this debacle, because it's affecting everybody. It's all the homeowners who are losing their homes, who can't refinance.
Right. Well, we can't repeat the same problems. That's the thing. And
please,
let me go back to what you said before you took on David's question. Are you suggesting that Wall Street sort of hinted with a wink-wink that they would have collusion with the ratings agencies, that we'll figure out the dirty part of this, we'll get them rated AAA, and you'll all be fine?
Well, I've sat with a few of the rating agencies and tried to figure out what they were thinking, giving AAA and AA ratings to a lot of this stuff. I do think that there was collusion. I think that everybody was making money in the process, in between the broker to the investment bank. And then the ones on the end, the investors and the homeowners, were the ones basically who were being squeezed. And look, all you got to do is look at what they rated as AAA or AA, and you know, really take a hard look at those products and wonder what they were thinking. And when I talked to them, I said, why would you rate these things AAA? I mean, look at, did you ever look at the information that was being brought to you by these banks, these portfolio of loans, which, by the way, the banks were paying the rating agencies? And they'd say, no, we're not a due diligence agency. They're not a due diligence agency. They didn't bother to try to check out the information to see whether these were good loans.
Hang with us if you can. We want to pass this subject around our panel here. Richmond, you were saying, of course, they did collude when he mentioned that. When we don't have any evidence that they did, but maybe we have investigators like the FBI looking into that right now.
Oh, I think that's clear. There's been thousands of people who have been arrested by the FBI for fraud. People made up incomes and made up addresses. You had people who bought 500 homes under alias names. That happened. John was talking about CRA, and Cody and I were speaking about this.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, you can. That's a matter of degrees, whether it's 70% or 50% or 30% of the loans were from this area or from that area or from this institution or not. Regardless, all of these government institutions were set up to funnel capital into these markets at below market rates. That's what the government was instituting, and that's why we now find ourselves in this bubble, partly.
They weren't below
market rates?
Oh. No,
excuse me. I want to be clear about the facts. None of this was below market rates. This is actually above market rates.
No. Wait a minute, John. What he was saying is that, if I get him correctly, is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were given below market rates to buy the mortgages.
Exactly.
They needed the money. They needed to borrow to buy the mortgages, which were then sold as packages to the investment banks. And they were getting below market rates from the Fed in order to buy those mortgages. That's a fact.
Well.
That's a fact. I mean, there's just no question about it, John. They were getting a little advantage.
It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the safety and soundness of these loans, because
but it had a lot to do with the safety and soundness of Fannie and Freddie, because Fannie and Freddie got into a lot of stuff they should never have gotten into, and that's one of the things that got us into this mess.
But let's not put the cart before the horse. Fannie and Freddie followed the industry and followed Wall Street down this path. There's no question about it. Bear Stearns 10 years ago was buying CRA loans because they figured out that lower income people, blue collar working class people, did not refinance their loans as quickly as others, and these were CRA loans, and therefore it was better to invest in those because they paid higher interest rates and they didn't default, and they were a good investment. And when they began to expand that universe, where they began to take subprime with interest-only payments or exploding interest rates and stated income loans and piggyback loans and all this funny money kind of lending that occurred, when that occurred and all the rest of the industry expanded, the market shifted. I mean, it went from banks being the primary purveyor of these mortgages to independent mortgage companies, and the rest of the industry followed, and that includes Fannie and Freddie.
You're still arguing a matter of degrees, though, and not principle. In the end, that capital was flowing into the market at below market rates.
Okay, and guys, we got to leave it at that, because before we go, we want a little market wrap.